Hey everybody, Russell Eubanks here. Really excited, really eager to talk to you today over the next few minutes over how you can improve your cybersecurity culture. What gives me the right to do this? Privileged to be a principal instructor with SANS. I was looking at my calendar just the other day. I've been teaching with SANS the last 13 years, just hard to believe. And also worked on writing some classes as well. My former day job was SVP, CISO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, and 3 years ago started my own company, Security Ever After. But the most important part is thanks for being here. Really enjoy seeing many familiar faces and names here in the chat box. As always, any questions, comments, or anything throughout the time that we're together today, please don't suffer in silence. Please, please, please just let me know and be happy to address those as they come through. And my goal for you is in exchange of you spending time with Laura and myself today in this session, I'd like to equip you and empower you to go and make a difference, improve your cybersecurity culture. Again, that's my goal. That's what we want for you in exchange for the time that you're spending with us. So with that said, hey, let's get going and do this now. And you might be wondering, okay, Russell, okay, of all the things I can talk about, of all the things I can spend my hour on right now, why this topic? I'd rather chase and work on cyber things, or chase alerts, or stop malicious emails, or go to training, learn some more cyber things. And you're like, well, why would I even bother to do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. And as it turns out, I may not need to share this with many of you, but cybersecurity remains a critical aspect at every organization. Now, in my career, I've been in cyber long before we had the word cyber to use. That's kind of the buzzword these days is cyber. But I've never worked at a company that existed because of cybersecurity. Like never for a cybersecurity vendor, or the only reason a company exists is because of cyber. But I imagine where you work right now, I imagine places you work in your career kind of the same way. They exist to make revenue, do good for the public, do public service, protect countries, respond to medical emergencies, all types of things that you have worked at companies that they're trying to achieve, but they didn't exist. They didn't create those companies because of cyber. However, more and more becoming so critical. The dependency, the resilience on cybersecurity for all of us is something that has certainly captured our attention. And as attacks get more sophisticated and more frequent, I tell you, when I pick up the newspaper, or I look at Twitter feed, or look at SANS News Bites, or look at all the different places that we can get information, it's kind of rare that we don't get information about yet another company that's been compromised. I woke up this morning and saw that some parts of Dallas, Texas, structures are being impacted now because of perhaps a ransomware, perhaps an incident. I'm like, man, I got friends in Dallas. I've been to Dallas many times to teach and do things. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a bad day. Again, it's rare, just as that one example that I saw earlier this morning, it's rare for us not to learn about this. And it's rare for us not to get an alert or three on a particular day that says, yeah, there's a reminder that cyber incidents, the impacts of cyber incidents, continue to impact us. And what do we do as a result of that? What we could choose to do is to help to develop a culture of cybersecurity. Why do we want to create a culture of cybersecurity? Well, so that not just the security team, me, you, and us here in this conversation, but just imagine what would it look like in the future. Imagine what would it look like before the week or the year is over if you were somehow to insert security into the culture of your organization, whatever organization that you work at. Just kind of imagine, we oftentimes as cybersecurity leaders, we do work on strategic planning. We plan for the future. We plan to improve our cyber. We plan to prevent, detect, deter much faster. And we put initiatives, we have funding, we maybe get to grow our teams to do that. What would it look like if you were intentional about and had a plan to develop a culture that didn't just engage your team in technology, your team in cybersecurity, but dare I say would engage your entire organization? What would it look like if it became a team sport, not just a sport of us geeks and nerds, and I profess to be one of those. So how are we going to do this? Now, the next few minutes, I'm going to explore how to build a culture of cybersecurity. Again, in exchange of you spending some time with us today, again, so grateful. It's amazing to see so many folks here. Love, love, love it so much. I'd like to make you aware of this and then help you to have some takeaways, in particular 4 takeaways, maybe a few extras along the way, to help you build and nurture and grow a culture of cybersecurity in your organization. You see, in a lot of companies, cybersecurity is their top risk. I spent a lot of time doing coaching, mentoring, virtual CISO, a lot of teaching for SANS. Matter of fact, I get to teach the next 2 weeks for SANS. So excited about getting to do that in real life. So amazing. The beautiful thing is, one of the things I work on, especially for companies that are publicly traded in the United States, thanks to the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, every publicly traded company has to file reports on a quarterly basis. One report I look at a lot for publicly traded companies is their 10K, or their annual report. And one of the things I do, and you can try to do this as well, is to look at a publicly traded company, go to the SEC's EDGAR database, EDGAR, or also on a publicly traded company's website, you can see their annual report. And one of the fun things I like to do is download the PDF, look at that, and then just do a search. Hey, how many times is the word cyber mentioned in the annual report? And I have to tell you, it's like rare to not see that. Matter of fact, I did some research earlier this week for one of my clients. I saw there was over 100 mentions in their annual report of the word cyber and the risk that it posed. And very common to have that, very common to see that. And in fact, if you work with or work for a publicly traded company, that's something you could do right now. You could say, oh, how important, when the company talks about itself to their regulators, when they talk about to their investors, to their executives, how often is the word cyber mentioned? There's not a magic number, but I think it might be something interesting to watch and to track and to see how it continues, in my opinion, to grow and to grow and to grow. But how does this relate? It's interesting. Back in the day, I was privileged to lead a very, very large team at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. Atlanta's where I live. And I had the privilege, because my leader, my boss, the chief operating officer, she was second in charge of the whole operation. She was really concerned about and was a champion of cybersecurity. And I had the privilege of briefing a large amount of the organization, leaders in the organization, on cyber on a monthly basis. Amazing focus there in that organization. And every once in a while, my leader, Marie, she's since been retired, and of course, I don't work there anymore either, but she would make a statement. And I would always choose to believe this statement was a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question where someone asks a question, but they really don't want an answer. They didn't make it more of making a statement. And so my former leader would have this rhetorical statement that says, if cyber is a top risk, hey, everybody, if cybersecurity is a top risk, and then she would follow it up with, what are we doing to treat it that way? If cyber is a top risk, what are we doing to treat it that way? And I'll never forget the first time I heard it. I remember sitting up straighter in my chair and like, whoa, this is kind of what we asked for as cyber professionals, cyber practitioners. We've wished, we've longed, we've waited for someone to give us attention. And I'm afraid, my friends, that's exactly what we have right now. So I'll ask you this question. If cyber is a top risk in your organization, and I imagine it is, what are you doing to treat it that way? Like, if you had to prove to me, if you had to prove to Laura that cyber is a top risk, how would you prove it? Would you show me your calendar? Would you show me your briefings? Would you show me your slides? Would you show me metrics and dashboards? How could you prove that? You see, I want it to be the case that because cyber is a top risk, I want you to be able to treat it like the top risk it is. More attention, more funding, more exposure, more mentions in an annual report. All kinds of things could help to demonstrate that. But how could you prove that? That's something, a little bonus thing to think about there. So let's examine this in 4 different ways, and not just because it's May the 4th. It's so cool of that, and you probably see messages going back and forth, but we're going to happen to have 4 different ways, and that's what we'll talk about to improve your culture. So you'll learn 4 different practical ways to improve your cybersecurity culture, and these are things that you can do before you log off at the end of the day, things you might have recurring calendar reminders to focus on and continue to work on throughout the rest of your cybersecurity career. And the goal is to not just have information, like me telling you 4 things, 4 practical ways, but I want each of them to also have an action step. I want it to move from information, well, that's interesting trivia, information to application. Again, that's my goal for you here. So ready, set, let's do it. So this information for a couple of key points of attribution. First one is myself, Ryan Rosado, Fleeta's Post, and Professor Roger White. We have some conversations on topics of cybersecurity on a regular basis. So we talked about this quite a bit. As it turns out, the idea from this came from MIT School of Management. MIT Sloan School of Management specifically. As you can see here, it says how to build a culture of cybersecurity. Again, not just Russell's idea, it's really smart people that publish this research. It says, okay, you want to know how to do this? Here's how we go do this. And specifically, as we kind of zoom in on this, we can see, here's how to infuse safe behavior into corporate culture. Here's how to infuse safe behavior into corporate culture. Wow. Not sure I understand what that means, but I look at this like, I think I'd like to do that. I'd like to infuse some safe behavior in our corporate culture. Wow, I thought I was blocking alerts. I thought I was responding to DLP alerts and SOC alerts and updating my security policy. No. Here, we want to have something even bigger than that. And if I could, we were kind of sitting around having a cup of coffee together. Maybe you'd ask me this question, hey, Russell, how do I do that? How do I infuse safe behavior into corporate culture? Well, I think a really neat way would be with more attribution for Brene Brown. So on a bookshelf right behind me, lots of books there. One book I've had on my shelf for a long time. It collected dust for years and years and years. I finally read it from Brene Brown. It's called Dare to Lead. Dare to Lead, highly recommend. You can see some YouTube talks and TED Talks from her, but she makes a point in that book, Dare to Lead. She says these words, to be clear is to be kind. To be clear is to be kind. I love that. I quote it all the time. It's like, yeah, you know what? You're right. We as cybersecurity leaders, cybersecurity practitioners, we could do well, and I'm raising my hand, I'm guilty of this, could be doing well to be more clear, and it would be kind to our colleagues if we were more clear of how we want to do these particular things. One example, Lance Spitzer and I would talk about this one quite a bit. We can look at the things that we say, the language that we use. One of those is, maybe you've made this statement. Okay, I've made this statement. Security is everyone's job. Security is everyone's job. It's kind of memorize it, maybe get a tattoo, maybe get a shirt, maybe you get a little slogan or a trinket that says security is everyone's job. But if you think about it, security probably is your job, and security definitely is my job. But what about my non-tech, non-cyber friends and colleagues and leaders? It's a catchy phrase, security is everyone's job, but if we don't help every one of our colleagues, our CFO, our COO, our accountant, our physical security partners and practitioners, if we don't help them to see how they're involved and invite them to be involved in our security culture, they're just going to say things like, well, yeah, that's Russell's job. And Laura, she's got that. And Alex and Andy and Ann and Anthony and so many other people, yeah, it must be their job. I'm busy being an accountant. I'm busy defending our building. I'm busy writing code or doing DevSecOps, or unless we're clear. What would it look like Instead to say, security is your job. So way number one here is to consider, again, with full attribution and full mad respect to MIT Sloan School of Business, is to look at this and say, what would it look like to make it someone's job to be the culture owner? Like someone's responsibility to do that. In the article, they talked about it. I give an example at a large bank. There's a CEO of a very large bank and worked in financial services for a while myself, where the CEO kicks off all of the all staff meetings with a cybersecurity story or a briefing or a reminder. Again, go back in your memory banks just a few minutes ago when I was at a very large, very prominent bank. My leader, she would say, if cybersecurity is a top risk, what are we doing to treat it that way? She was, in fact, before we had the language and the vocabulary, the culture owner. She set the tone at the top to help us all realize, hey, this is an important thing. What are we doing to treat that risk in this way? It could be a personal experience, relevant or noteworthy incidents that are happening. But think about this. What would it look like if someone who's not you had that voice? Now you're like, wow, my CEO, they're too busy. They don't know cyber. They don't know all the jargon. They don't know the language. And you're right about all that stuff. Now, truth is, it might mean that while the owner might be the owner of the culture in your organization might be someone with chief in their title or chief in their job description, it might be that you would be the one who would give them ideas or give them relevant anecdotes or stories or, somehow de-anonymized information from previous incidents or lessons learned to share in a way that respects privacy, respects human rights and individual privacy protections, but says, hey, last year ransomware is kind of a thing. And last year our incident costs were going up, and to help remind them again. So even if you're the person that has to equip them or give them a little one pager that says, here's some words that you can say, and maybe they do that, their voice is more powerful. Their voice is more meaningful than what my voice is and what your voice is and what our voice is. So again, even if you have to write the words, even if you have to coach them up a little bit, the power, the authority that they have when someone else's job is to be the culture owner, what would that be worth? I imagine that'd be pretty priceless. And this idea of initiatives like that, 5 minutes of time, 4 minutes of time, recurring basis, all of a sudden folks will start to remember. Folks will start to pay attention. Folks will start to realize and expect that everyone has a role to play in security culture, embracing attitudes and embracing beliefs, those attitudes and beliefs that ultimately affect our overall security behavior. And as we think about that, who can be that person for you? Who can be that non-tech, hopefully, executive who can help change and drive the change of attitudes and beliefs and ultimately behavior? Why do I need that again? I like technical things. I like looking at frameworks. I like looking at alerts. I like looking at all the things I like looking at it. And I imagine you're the same way. But what if that was possible? I imagine your budget, the budget at your company, the budget at your team doesn't afford you to have every cyber person to sit with every single colleague in your organization. It's probably a bad financial decision if that's the case, because there's a lot of places where finances and human resources and people can be deployed to do good for their company. And in light of that, are there ways in which proper messaging, someone being the culture owner, like the next best thing? What if everyone was invited to participate in the sport of cybersecurity? Again, it doesn't have to be the CISO, it doesn't have to be the CIO, and if it's not, that's even better. Having someone to be the voice, to be the face, to be the advocate for everyone being involved in cybersecurity culture at your organization. Again, that's something that can happen. And why does this matter? And I think of culture. Come back. I can think of culture with culture, and I think like this: like, man, these people living and doing things just like at your company. You're certain times, certain ways of doing your job, and everything. And culture is a hot topic. I remember when I was recruited to go and work at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. Had a great job before, very familiar with how things were working. I knew my role in my prior organization. And if you were to go and ask the HR recruiter, Herb, hey, Herb, what's the number one, what's the top question that Russell asked over and 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 over again? It was about the culture. Hey, Herb, tell me about the culture. What's it like to walk the halls of the organization? I mean, I've learned about the organization like in economics school back in college, but what's it like to work there? I don't know. And I imagine job changes, promotions, you're kind of like, ugh, I'm kind of comfortable here. What's the culture like there? Is it worth it to risk leaving something I'm familiar with to go be and participate in a culture that maybe they won't like me, maybe I won't like them, and then what will happen there? See, culture matters a great deal. Culture is really, really important. And this idea, this critical question for the first of 4 things to talk about on May the 4th here is for you, in your company, who's responsible for security culture? Now, maybe if I could overcome an objection, some of you might be saying, well, the CEO, they never listened to me. I've never met them before. I don't even know who I am. Maybe there's opportunity for you to start. Maybe there's opportunity for you to lead even before you're in charge. Maybe to start and generate that momentum to say, how can we be more clear? How can we be more kind? How can we invite more broad participation from the non-security people at understanding and helping our company be more safe and secure, perhaps by looking at way number 1. So then let's say, well, okay, that is one way. Okay, maybe you have some ideas, maybe there's some takeaways, maybe some things that you can do there. Another invitation I want to make for you here is this idea, looking at way number 2. If you want to foster change, and I imagine you do, or you wouldn't be here. Wow, so many people here. Wow, so awesome and overwhelming to see that. How can we communicate in a way where our colleagues can actually understand it, or to, again, with a hat tip and mad respect to our friends at MIT Sloan School of Management, they said, use language that resonates. Use language that resonates. What does it mean to use language that resonates? Well, I'll tell you, several years ago, it was a long-term goal of mine to become a chief information security officer. Finally achieved that goal, done that several times. It's like, yeah. And then for reasons beyond my understanding, the company asked me to consider being the CIO instead. So leading all of IT and cyber, not just cyber. I'm like, okay, well, more money, more responsibility, more influence. Okay, we'll give it a try. And on my very first day, I'll never forget it. One of the project managers came up to me and says, Russell, if you want to be successful as a CIO, I know what it really wasn't on my vision board to be a CIO, but yeah, please go on. If you want to be successful as a CIO, there's a key to your success. There's a key. Yeah, let me get a note. Let me write this down. What's the key? And he told me, he says, you have to learn to be bilingual. You have to learn, Russell, how to speak a better language. If you want to be a successful CIO, you need to learn how to speak another language. And I thought, another language? I'm really good at English. That's kind of about it. So I've got to learn German or Dutch or French. And he said, no, speak the language of business. The language of business. How can I be bilingual? I need to be able to not just speak cyber, speak tech, speak APTs and MITRE ATT&CK and all these other things that we have in our normal vocabulary. But when I'm communicating the status of our program, when I'm having lunch with a business colleague, if I say things like MITRE ATT&CK and APT 29 and all the other things that we say when we're amongst friends who understand that, when we say those things to others, here's that Russell again. He's saying things he's excited about it, but I don't have any idea what he's talking about. I need And I imagine you need to be able to use language that resonates with your business colleagues. This idea that says, how could you do this? In the article that I referred to, and again, full attribution, we'll share a link, we'll share the slides, all the stuff's coming your way. And that's one of our commitments to do that. Is one idea that was shown there is that major insurance company, they determined that the term cybersecurity, as cool as it is, as cool as that word is, it just wasn't resonating at their organization. And they changed the messaging from, hey, cybersecurity is important and we need to focus on cybersecurity and it's a top risk. They change it to, our goal is to protect our data and our systems. Oh, that's more clear. That's language that resonates. It's language that says, oh, that's why we're doing cyber. That's why it's important. That's why we want to, we need to, we must be able to respond to those. Oh, so in that organization, in that culture, finding language that resonates better, maybe working with your communications team, maybe folks that are writers as a profession, or folks who've been trained to be great communicators. Hey, how's cyber? When I say cyber, how does that resonate with you? And if so, great. If not, find alternate ways to be able to share in their words and their language in ways that can make it resonate even better. I know what cyber is. You know what cyber is. We know what cyber is. But what if? What if there's a better way to use language that would resonate even better with them? Again, this idea for videos or blogs or articles or quick little videos, or gosh, you could pull out your phone these days and very, very quickly be able to communicate or send a message, assuming you're okay, your company's okay with doing that, to make something catchy, capture their attention, capture their desire, capture their interest, capture their willingness to participate in the mission of being involved with understanding and doing the things that are necessary to protect better information assets at your organization. And some companies, this brings back some memories here, this idea of looking at some companies, that language might be money. Hey, we can save money if we can avoid fines, avoid penalties, avoid embarrassment, when the world knows that maybe we're not as good at cyber as what we want it to be there. You can look for what competitors are doing, folks in your industry peers. Maybe you have a formal or informal network of fellow security practitioners that you regularly connect with. I sure do on Signal, different lists and ways to connect with peers and colleagues to just, hey, what are you doing on this problem? Or how are you dealing with tabletops for your executives? Being able to get and understand that information as clearly and as quickly as possible. And again, sometimes it's by communicating with respect to dollars, opportunity cost, dollars spent, and any trends that are shown there. And then we get to this critical question number 2 here that says, okay, well, in your organization, again, I can't answer the question. I can only present the question to you. Here's the question. What language in your company resonates better? Is cyber the word? Awesome. Is cyber the word? And you say, no, it's not. Nobody really kind of understands that. What would it look like to be able to communicate in business language the cyber things, having that ability to pivot from cyber speak to business speak so that your folks who make decisions of how much budget you get, how much funding you get, how much support you get for your security program, how can you speak in a way where they can understand and they can make a more informed risk-based decision? So that's the first 2. And hey, we're halfway there. And some would say we're living on a prayer. But wait, that's just my 80s brain going on here. This third of 4 ways is this: to make cybersecurity part of formal employee evaluation. Now, if I were to ask you before the start of the hour, wow, we're already halfway through our time together today. Questions, comments, cries of outrage, things to share, love to see, and respond to those accordingly. But if I were to say, hey, is cyber part of your job description? You say, yeah, man, like a big part. Like I better do cyber well if I want to get a good bonus or incentive or have my job next year. But what about your non-tech, non-cyber colleagues? You see, if we were to make cyber a part, now not like a massive part, but maybe a little part of everyone's job for the colleagues, not the users, but your colleagues, your professionals, folks who work at the same company you work at that just are experts in other areas, if you made it a part of their job description and you held them accountable to perform that itty bitty part of their job of being cyber. Now, I'm not saying that when someone clicks on a phishing test email, you're probably doing those maybe on a regular basis. First time someone clicks on that, you fire them, they lose their job. That's mean, that's cruel, that's kind of aggressive. But maybe there could be some consequences when someone does something that weakens or lessens or makes less secure your security posture through real phishing test, or leaving things on their desk they shouldn't leave, or exposing information they shouldn't expose, or whatever those things are that causes pain and angst at your organization. Maybe if you wanted to be clear, and by being kind, like Brene Brown in her book Dare to Lead says, maybe making folks aware, hey, by the way, this year we have this new initiative. We're going to have culture be a really big part of our organization. Maybe the CEO at the all hands meeting says, hey, cyber is your job, not just some vague cyber thing that happened. Everyone is going to now be held accountable for your behaviors and to be clear around those expectations. And hey, at the end of the year, you're going to be evaluated. Maybe 5% of your evaluation is how well did you engage and support the mission of securing our company's most important assets. So I've worked at places where in the past, someone that would click on an email or click on too many emails or be the root cause of incidents to have like demerits on their annual review. And they would literally get less money at the end of the year if their behaviors that they were trained how to avoid and they behaved a certain way anyway, they actually got less money at the end of the year. That's the way to get someone's attention. Hey, do I want my full bonus? Of course I do. Do you want yours? Of course you do. How can I make sure that I do things to get my full bonus, to get my promotion, to get my raise, to get whatever it is that's important to me? When we tie cybersecurity as a part of employee formal evaluation, then we might be able to do this. And it's not making up things. Certainly my recommendation here would be to partner with your colleagues in HR, human resources. Imagine they have a progressive discipline policy that's in place that says, hey, if you do these bad things, you'll be invited to do those bad things in another company because we just can't afford you doing that in our organization. Now, a long time ago, I was privileged to work. I guess my first management job was at UPS, a company actually headquartered here in Atlanta. And it's an older policy, but again, I'm an older person. 20 plus years ago, if you stole from the company twice, you lost your job. So I would train drivers or package car drivers that come in and, hey, welcome to UPS. We're glad you're here. Here's our policies. Oh, by the way, make sure that you don't steal twice, because if you steal twice, you'll lose your job. And there's a contract that said that. Again, at this point, it's not that case anymore. So don't go thinking this is permission to go steal things from any employer. But again, many, many years ago, they would have that consequence. You steal once, so you get written up. You steal twice, you got to lose your job. So I would make a statement of, hey, if you go steal, make it a good one, but don't do it twice because you'll lose your job. Again, an example of a policy that was in place a long time ago. But what does that say? It should say that eventually not following policy, eventually clicking on every phishing email, eventually leaving information out or sending it to your personal Gmail account or whatever behaviors are inappropriate and are against your policy, eventually not following policy should lead and needs to lead to loss of employment. See, this from Fleetus, great to see you here. Good friend. I mentioned you by name a little while ago. Security isn't what we do. We are managing our levels of insecurity. How insecure are we, and how do we manage and bring that risk down as low as possible? Love that. You're spot on. You're exactly right on that, Fleetus. And again, always great to see you. eventually not following policy needs to lead to loss of employment. But you go, Russell, how do I do that? What would that look like? Help me make sense of that. Do you have a little template? Do you know somebody? Can you help me do this easier, better, faster, stronger? Yeah. How about a little help from our friends? And by friends, I mean our friends at NIST. It turns out, I imagine you're all familiar with NIST cybersecurity framework. Turns out it's been out there for 10 years. I can't even believe it. Version 2 is about to come out. NIST said at RSA conference last week, they expect that to be out by the end of the year. But as it turns out, assignment of job responsibility already exists. Not one, not two, but three actual places. There's 3 places, and here they are. And the exact places in the CSF where you can find that. ID equals identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, that part. And then AM, asset management. The 6th thing on asset management says roles and responsibilities for the entire workforce and third-party suppliers and customers and partners are established. So for those of you aligning to or wondering how you compare to the cybersecurity framework, there's words here, there's language you could like copy and paste. Like for those of you based in the US, I realize not everyone is, but those of us based in the US, you can like, hey, thanks for the taxes that go to fund NIST. You got this language that you can copy, paste, and feel good about it. It's there and available. And a pretty low bar to be able to understand this, and with your leadership's permission, maybe HR's permission, maybe legal and privacy's permission, being able to help fuel progress toward making it clear, to have an evaluate how well that we're solving that. And so then the critical question for this topic here is this. And again, I'm going to give a question, and you may not like the question. I'll maybe write it down or get the slides later or listen to the replay later. Is cybersecurity a part of formal employee evaluation? Now, what it doesn't say is part of the security team's evaluation. You've already got that covered. You're evaluated at the end of the year, maybe even more often than that. Your company still participates in annual reviews. Hey, Russell, how good did you do your job? And have an evaluation and hope to have a nice conversation with my leader about that. But here this says, for all your employees, for all your colleagues, are they aware of and can they contribute to being able to solve for this? Even if it's a little percent, 5%. 5% of everyone's role at our company. How well did you contribute or take away from cybersecurity posture of our company? For accountants, for developers, for database administrators, and every single employee, every single colleague in your respective organization. What would it look like if it looked like that? What would your culture be? I have to imagine your culture is going to get better when people are invited to participate in the overall security culture in your respective organization, which leads us then to the 4th. Again, the date, May the 4th. Here we go. The 4th way to be able to do this, according to that article that we looked at just a moment ago, and full attribution to them, is to conduct tabletop exercises and fire drills. I'm going back in my memory bank like a long time ago, like in elementary school, back when they called it elementary school, and what do you call it, junior high school. I think now we call it middle school. This concept, every once in a while, our teacher would say, okay, we've got a fire drill or it's a fire alarm. If there's a problem, and knock on wood, we don't want one, but if there's a problem, here's how to evacuate. Here's how to huddle. Here's how to keep safe in the event of a real emergency. And I'm grateful, never had an issue like that in school. But we were trained and we were prepared. We knew what to do. We knew where to go. We knew how to behave, how to act, how to directions. But in this idea through scenario plannings or tabletop exercises or metaphorical fire drills, what types of testing and planning and exercises are in place? You see, you don't want, and I don't want, and we don't want the first time you've gone through a cyber attack be the time that you think about, what do we do? And who do we call? And my number, my internet, my emails, all these things that could happen, all these things that could threaten the viability of your company or the profitability of your company or the reputation of your company. You don't want to learn as you go through that. You want to, as much as possible, prepare for, practice, and rehearse exercises just like these. Back in the day, when I was in financial services, one of the things that we would do is we'd have very often, very frequent practice drills and exercises, tabletop scenarios, immersive exercises to make sure that our team was ready, equipped, and was prepared and had everything they needed as much as we could plan for to be responsible for those incidents. And one of those was a unique scenario. I'm not sure where I got the idea, but I had the idea of, okay, well, let's do this. Instead of just saying a tabletop exercise where maybe I'd say, hey, Amanda, I say, Amanda, glad that you're here. Amanda, hey, if there's a problem, I'm just going to call Amanda as part of the exercises. Hey, when there's this type of problem, what do you do? And the right answer is, well, everyone knows when you have this type of problem, call Amanda, she'll fix your problem. And thanks, Amanda, for letting me use you in this example. Well, it's one thing to say, I need to call Amanda. What if during that exercise, and turned out that's exactly what I did, when someone said, well, the answer to this problem, our production website is down, everyone knows we need to call Amanda. What do we do in the tabletop exercise? Okay, great. Call Amanda. And folks were like, wait, I've never done it this way before. That's new. I've not done it that way. Amanda, what if Amanda's asleep? What if she's busy? What if she's on PTO? What if all these things? And the test wasn't on, does everyone know to call Amanda? I promise I'll quit picking on you on this time, Amanda. And thanks for letting me have the latitude there. But the goal was, okay, if you had to do that, do you have everything you need to be able to do that? And we would literally call those individuals and get them on the phone. And here's what's happening. It's a scenario. Thanks for playing along. And what do we do? What's the next step? Not just assuming we knew the next action, being able to take that. And what do we learn in exercises like that? Well, we collect a little paper and pen or note takers to say, wow, we need to, and we have to, and even simple practical things, especially these last 3 years, your instant responders largely have been at home. Is the instant response manual at home where they can get to it? Is it in a place where they can access it securely? What are some of the lessons you can learn? Not through the exercise, just going through and saying, check the box, we did one, but collecting a list of things, adjusting your plans, your policies, your procedures so that you can enhance your playbooks, make your instant response manuals more relevant, and ultimately improve the culture. Ultimately improve the culture of your organization by inserting cybersecurity into the culture. See, I'm tempted sometimes to say, well, I want to change the culture of my company. But you know what? Until my title says Chief Executive Officer, until I'm the boss of the boss of the boss, I don't have a lot of opportunity to do that. But what I can do as a cybersecurity leader, professional, just like you, is I can look for ways to insert cyber into the culture, existing culture of our organization. And that's something I can do. That's something I have done. And that's what my invitation for you on this critical question is to consider this. And what maybe brings back memories. I was searching for images. Man, I've not seen one fire alarm looks like that in, well, a long time. But as I look at this and I think about this, I have to ask you this question. I would be failing you if I didn't ask this question. And it's a rhetorical question. When was your last fire drill? Seriously, when was your last fire drill? When was the last time that you had an exercise like what we've been talking about the last couple of minutes? If it's been a while, maybe a to-do is, hey, I need to go and schedule an exercise or work with a partner, work with an ISAC. Hopefully you're working with ISACs or folks in industry or different sectors where you work at today. And if you've done one recently, hearty pat on the back, good for you. May the force be with you all throughout the day and throughout the year. That's awesome. Good for you. I couldn't be more happy for you. Wherever that lands, if you've done it in a while, not done it in a while, what can be done about that? And see, all these things, these four things that we've talked about already, it leads to, for me, the best advice I've ever been given in my whole life. Came to me from someone who has nothing to do with cyber, nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with any of the things that we love to do and make careers out of doing. And here's what it was. Over 26 years ago, informal mentor of mine. And what that means is she had no idea. I was like, wow, I like the way she lives her life. I like the way she does her things. And I'm just kind of taking notes. One day when I grow up, I'm going to be like my informal mentor. She gave me this advice. And the advice she gave me was right here on the screen. Get wisdom as cheaply as you can. Get wisdom as cheaply as you can. What does it mean to get wisdom as cheaply as you can? How can I learn lessons from someone else? How can I not have to go through the same pain and struggle and incident response and getting a phone call from Krebs or a story on the New York Times about the company that I've been privileged to lead, or the security team I'm a part of, or the company that I've employed by or contract with? How can I get knowledge the easy way instead of the hard way? Looking at Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, Gartner Report, SANS reports, News Bites, the Ouch newsletter, so many places for intelligence to be able to pull in. And I hear it hurts when you don't disclose everything to your regulator like you're supposed to. I hear it really is a bad idea and a bad look for PR purposes if you don't patch your systems on a regular basis and make sure they're configured properly. I hear it's a bad idea to say things like security is everyone's job, and figuring that everyone's going to understand what that means for them individually. You see, I want for you to be able to get wisdom as cheaply as you can for the, gosh, been here for about 46 minutes already, a few more minutes still to go, a few more things and topics to cover. And again, as always, questions, comments here for that for sure. But as excited as I am for you to consider doing these things, what do I know about you? What's what I know about me? I can hear you now. And it's no accident. I literally get to go to New Orleans next week and get to teach a SANS class. I'm very happy about this. But I can hear you now. You're busy. You're probably about to type in the chat, Russell, have you seen my calendar? I have so many things to do. I don't have any time for this. This all sounds good, maybe inspirational, go team. And yeah, someone should really focus on one or two or three or four of these things on how to improve a security culture. But I just don't have time. I don't have enough of this as it is. And you're asking me for more. And if that's you, and that's been me, kind of be shocked if that's not you already. You're having this objection. Here's my response. A statement I got from a formal mentor of mine, Michael Hyatt. He made a statement. It sticks with me. I've said it probably every day the last 10, 12 years. He said this area to me. He said, what gets scheduled gets done. What gets scheduled gets done. What does it mean? What gets scheduled gets done? Well, if I were to do a screen share of my calendar, you'd see there's like a whole bunch of stuff on there. Meetings, webcasts. Gosh, spending time with you today has been like amazing. Nowhere else would I rather be in the world than right here with you right now. Deep in my heart, mean that. But there's other things I want to remember to do, like pay my taxes, like file my taxes, like prepare for webinars, like prepare for teaching next week, like updating classes I've been privileged to write, the other obligations that I have, both a personal and a professional perspective. So what do I do with what gets scheduled gets done? Turns out you can make recurring reminders. You can make meetings with yourself. You can say, hey, at the end of every quarter, plan a after action report popularized by the U.S. Army, maybe some of the procedures to look for your incident response. You have lessons learned meetings or lesson learned briefings where you can say, hey, what lessons did we learn? Kind of the opposite of get wisdom as cheaply as you can, and schedule that. And you have to keep space in your brain to remember, hey, have I done that lately? How many days has it been? You've got a system built in that annoys you or emails you or blocks off your calendar once a quarter that says, I want to go and see, how am I doing against my goals? How am I doing against improving the security culture in my company? Again, what gets scheduled gets done. So I hear the objections. I see that. I know that. And I respect that. And I realize I'm asking you to consider doing some more things that I want to make it easier for you to be able to do just that. So I've got a question I see. Ruben, thanks for your question. Let me take a look at that real quick. Even if we have a vibrant security culture, are we expecting too much of the end users? Well, first of all, I love the word colleagues. It's just a bias of mine. I'm expecting too much of our colleagues. Despite our phishing awareness and sessions, people can't be vigilant all the time, and people will make mistakes at some point. Yep, we're all human. You know what? Even us cyber people do the very same thing, self included. So what can we do to help them rather than give them more things to do on top of their job? I think, making it more relevant to them. For the accountant, the accountant, someone in finance, maybe the controller, maybe the CFO. Hey, here's how the intersection of how what you're doing impacts the cybersecurity posture, which could also in turn impact the financial status, the financial health, financial viability of our organization. And so giving them small little bits of education that's relevant could be one tip. I know in a lot of companies, they'll have annual training, maybe Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October. A lot of companies celebrate that and celebrate a whole bunch of things. But has it been updated lately? Is it relevant? Is it short? Is it understandable? Is it too long and boring and people just next, finish just to get off the naughty list for security? Looking for ways to make it more relevant for them, more exciting for them. If your culture supports it, things to have rewards. When I worked in telecom, the CIO, a huge telecom company, would walk around with gift cards in their pocket, and they would hand them out when they would catch someone doing something good. Hey, $25 for you, $25 for you, Amazon for you, Amazon for you. So assuming your culture supports it, your company supports things of that nature, being able to go out and engage and listen and participate and understand them better could be some strategies, Marlia, to be able to engage them more and not put a heavy burden on them, but do invite them to participate and do that. And one final thing, I said to us almost done, but one more final thing there would be maybe adopting language and vocabulary from Department of Homeland Security. Like when I travel, when I have traveled and I will travel, they make this common statement. If you see something, say something. Maybe how you enlist them is that one simple thing. When you see something, call this number. Or when you see something, send an email. Or when you see something, send a Slack message. Invite them when something looks weird to let you know they're off the hook. Tell me when something, and don't punish them, don't get them in trouble, but to invite them to be able to do that would be my a whole bunch of things there on that topic. And again, thank you for that. So we're starting to wind down a little bit. One thing here, Lance Spitzer and I, co-authors of a class with SANS Management 521, Leading Cybersecurity Change, Building a Security-Based Culture. We did a lot of research in this class. We subscribed to the paid version of HBR, Harvard Business Review, for articles, just like I started off this whole conversation with, of here's what the folks in the cultural world are saying about culture. Here's what they're saying, research that we've done, a lot of time putting this information together, and not just saying, okay, here's a review and survey of a lot of really smart people talking about culture, but finding ways to make it relevant. Just like, hey, it's nice we had that article, got these 4 things, but what are some practical ways through questions and responses and showing up, maybe even taking notes and being inspired by this, to move from information to application, and then ultimately to transformation, transforming and having security be a part of the culture of the organization that you're privileged to work at. What does this look like? What's an action that you could take here? Completely free here. And I kind of zoomed in on this with the course demo button. Turns out the class here, Management 521, we're actually going to be the first SANS class to switch from MGT as in management to LDR as in leadership. Very happy about that, very proud about that. Lance and I are super, super stoked to be the first class to transform what we called ourselves from managers to leaders. Love it so much. And in fact, when I teach this class, the end of July, then we'll flip over, and after July, will be called LDR 521. Lance and I are updating the class as we speak. I'm halfway through with my updates. Lance is working on his updates, an amazing partner to work with. You've heard of him, you know him, an amazing communicator. Lance and I together put this class together with ideas. And so again, the idea here is completely free. Like right now, you could click, well, not on the screen, but on the website, you could click on this and get an hour excerpt to listen for other practical ways where culture can be embedded and stored and improved in your respective organization that we have right there. And it's just been amazing to spend time with you. Seeing some things come through in the chat, I'll take a look at, and in the Q&A as well. And that is just fantastic. Yeah, like Laura said, the slides will be available. Like Laura said, you better give me your slides, and I'm going to send those to her whenever we're done. We'll upload those into the SANS portal. Recordings are available. If you're listening live, thank you. If you're on the replay, hey, glad you're here as well. And then one final thing I'll say, here's my information. Love for you to stay in touch, email, Twitter, and then a direct link, SANS.org/MGT521. Hey, I thank you. You spent 55 plus minutes with me and Laura. I'm grateful. Again, I highlight my heart's like swelling and so excited and so grateful that you've chosen to spend time as you're starting to understand what are some practical ways that you can do to improve the security culture at the organization that you're privileged to be at. I'll stay on for a second. If you have any questions, comments, anything, please let me know. Thanks, Laura, for making this possible. And thanks, everyone, for being a part with us today.
Thank you, Russell. We do have one question here from Maria. Cybersecurity issues are well known through informal education. Has SANS invested in informal education?
Cybersecurity issues. So thanks for, as promised, I appreciate that. So cybersecurity issues well known throughout informal education. Has SANS invested in informal education? I think one of the things that I would point to as our time's winding down is SANS.org/free. One of the things that SANS did at the start of the pandemic was to have a collection of all the things that are not paid, things like pay for classes, pay for a master's degree, and that kind of nature. I would point to that location and look for those things, whether it be newsletters, webcasts like what we have here, to be able to point towards things that are absolutely free. Every time I teach, I talk about it, SANS.org/free, and a listing of all the free things and perhaps ways to address informal education, newsletters, screensavers, little notices like what I said, security is your job versus security is everyone's job, might be some ways that you could have that be addressed. And then I also see Aaron. So not a question, but thank you, Russell. My privilege, my pleasure. Anonymous attendee, do you have any advice about creating remedial training programs? I would say, if possible, a great chance to be able to work with your local human resources, organizational development, OD workers who already have plans like that in place that you might be able to leverage, borrow, or like what Lance says, steal, and use that and build upon that to be able to have a remedial training program. One thing that I've done in the past is whenever someone over the course of a rolling year, maybe they clicked on one too many phishing test emails, we'd bring them in for an in-person session. And it wasn't my idea at all, someone else's idea. They would actually reverse order the phishing test that went through and put them on a big screen. And as a class, as a cohort, everyone would be invited to point out the 15 reasons why they shouldn't have clicked on those links. And what did that do? It showed that we were cared, we were curious, we wanted to help them overcome any barriers they had for understanding that a lot of email out there is just bad stuff. And then at some point, what was always funny is someone would say, hey, that's a phishing email. I saw that. And of course, the reason they saw that is because they engaged, they clicked on those. Kind of made it lighthearted, humorous. And what we also did was we said, you know what, it's easy to blame someone, says, hey, you need to stop clicking on that link. Why would you do that? You're the problem. If you ask questions such as, what is it about my leadership that allowed them to think they can click on every email. I can look in the mirror, I can take some responsibility, and I can make a better, more relevant message and do my part to do things as possible to reduce the likelihood that people will click on those in the future. So anonymous attendee, I hope that is helpful. George, love your question. From my experience, which industry has the most appetite and achieves security embedded in their culture as you described? Without a doubt, financial services. Why? There's a lot of money at stake in financial services. And by far, companies like, not exclusive there, but I typically see much more cyber investment, much more awareness of culture because of the stakes that are higher there in that industry because of the monetary loss it has and unfortunately continues to occur. It doesn't have to just be there, but those can be models, whether you're a team of one or you're privileged to lead people that lead people that lead people that do all kinds of cyber. George, that would be my answer there. My pleasure. All right, Laura, back to you. Anything else before we adjourn?
No, I believe we are all done for the day then. Thank you so much, Russell, for your expertise and sharing your knowledge with the community. Everybody, this will be recorded and the slides will be available in your SANS portal in about 48 hours. You'll also be able to download your CPE credit in your portal under my webcast. We hope to see you again soon and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.